Which one is better, the Dexcom G7 or the FreeStyle Libre 3 Plus? Let's find out. I wore both sensors at the same time for a whole month, so I could directly compare their accuracy, their user-friendliness, as well as their hardware. And in this video, I'm going to break it all down for you. Keep in mind, this is my personal experience. Yours might be different. I've been living with type 1 diabetes since 1997. I've been using continuous glucose monitors since around 2013-ish. And I've worn predominantly Dexcom sensors, but I've also tried other Libre sensors as well as Medtronic sensors. But this is the first time that I'm doing a side-by-side comparison of the Dexcom G7 and the FreeStyle Libre 3 Plus. I asked you all what you wanted to know, and I'll be answering as many of your questions as I can, with a strong focus on accuracy, since that came up a lot. We'll be covering a lot of ground in this video, so if you're only interested in a certain topic, use the time codes that I've put down in the video description. Let's start with a quick comparison of the sensors, so the hardware. And for me, which one I prefer is actually very close. Here you see the Libre sensor compared directly to the Dexcom sensor. As you can see, Libre is a smaller sensor. However, the sensor that sits under the skin is somewhat thicker. I was planning on doing a Libre 3 review, but that sensor will be discontinued in the US as of September 30th, 2025. So the focus here will only be on Libre 3 Plus. Not that there is much difference between Libre 3 Plus and Libre 3, except that the Plus sensor is a 15-day sensor and it integrates with more devices, such as insulin pumps, but more on that a little later. Both the Dexcom G7 as well as the FreeStyle Libre 3 Plus are meant to be worn on the back of the arm here in the US. And the insertion process is very similar and fairly straightforward for both sensors. You simply clean the skin, press the button, and then you want to activate your sensor in either your app or your receiver. The needle that inserts the sensor retracts right away and just leaves behind a small sensor underneath the skin. Generally, I don't think it hurts, but I do find there's a little bit of discomfort when inserting the Libre sensor. Overall, I didn't feel the sensors while I was wearing them for the whole month duration. To this story though comes that usually I actually don't wear my sensors on the back of my arm. That's not my preferred placement. That is the FDA cleared placement, so I did wear them on the back of my arm for this experiment, but normally I wear my Dexcom on my abdomen or on my thigh. So for this experiment, I would say that I disliked wearing them on the back of my arm to the same degree. I was very careful not to bump them on anything, and they were kind of annoying when I was sleeping or changing my clothes. All four sensors stuck on my skin for the full wear time, despite me being in the Florida heat, a lot of workouts, and being in and out of the ocean. So that was very impressive. But I continued wearing the FreeStyle Libre 3 Plus after this experiment, and this next one came off only after 11 days. So I did want to include that as well. Wear time for the FreeStyle Libre 3 Plus is 15 days, and for now, the Dexcom G7 has a wear time of 10 days plus a 12-hour grace period. I say for now because Dexcom G7 just recently received FDA clearance to be worn for 15 days plus a 12-hour grace period. We should see those 15 days G7 sensors being rolled out, becoming commercially available in the end of 2025. FreeStyle Libre 3 Plus does not require an overlay tape, but Dexcom G7 does. I did not use one though, and I did not do that because my skin can't tolerate the tape. I break out in hives. Instead, I usually wear a skin grip overlay tape. For whatever reason, I didn't need one for this experiment though. But I do know that how well the sensors will adhere really differs depending on your skin type. And you can see the edges did become a bit loose, but nothing major. One of the major differences between the two sensors on the hardware side is one is waterproof and the other one is water resistant. So this was really not an issue for me during this experiment since I did not go scuba diving and I didn't spend hours and hours and hours in the water. You can shower wearing both CGM systems, no problem, but I do think it's worth noting that Dexcom is waterproof in up to 8 feet of water for up to 24 hours. Not sure why you'd want to spend that much time submerged in water, but okay. Libre 3 Plus is only water resistant and only in up to 3.2 feet of water and only for up to 30 minutes, which on the other hand seems like a little bit too short of a time frame. To summarize on this, I think Libre wins when it comes to overall sensor size and as of right now, how long it lasts on the body. And I did find both the sensors to stick equally well. But I want this to be an honest comparison, so I do want to highlight that one sensor that fell off after 11 days. But it's not like I haven't had Dexcoms fall off in the past. It just didn't happen during the experiment, and the Dexcom falling off is just really rare for me. Now, let's talk accuracy. One thing is the clinical accuracy between the sensors. It's called MARD, M-A-R-D, and it's what the companies report. The lower the better, and if that's all there was to it, according to these self-reported MARDs, the sensors are equally accurate. But I'm guessing you're more interested in my experience, so let's talk about it. The sensors did not give exactly the same readings at all times, but I did not expect that either. At times they were wildly different, and then at times they're very similar. And I must admit, I wasn't that surprised when I saw that the average blood sugar between the first two sensors weren't exactly the same, and neither was the average from the second two sensors. For the full duration of this experiment, Libre read higher than my Dexcom sensors, but really not by that much. And I really think I put these sensors to the test. So for the first 2 weeks I was traveling, I was not in my usual routine, and my blood sugars were fluctuating way more. So I got a picture of how do they handle that. But the last 2 weeks were a little bit more calm. I'd say I was back in my routine. My blood sugars were a little bit more stable. And it was interesting to see how quickly each sensor were picking up on higher lows and just overall reacting whenever my blood sugars were not just bopping along. And one thing is the Libre reading versus the Dexcom reading, but I also did a lot of finger sticks to simply see how the sensors were measuring up. And what I found is that Libre starts out strong. It's generally really accurate as soon as it started, whereas the Dexcom sensors, a lot of them need at least a few hours before they become accurate. And this is very much in line with my experience wearing the Dexcom G7 sensor. So what I do is that I calibrate the sensor. So that sensor I just showed you, I had to calibrate that twice before it became accurate. Calibration means that if, based on finger sticks, the sensor is significantly off, you can add that blood sugar reading and the sensor will adjust. You cannot calibrate the FreeStyle Libre system, which isn't ideal. I actually think it's a major downside to that system. That being said, when we talk about accuracy, you cannot expect the reading that you get from a finger stick to be the exact same as your CGM reading at all time. Those two numbers can be different and the system can still be considered accurate. The main reason for this is that a CGM measures your blood sugars in the fluid underneath your skin, and that's generally 10 minutes behind your bloodstream. So if blood sugars are fluctuating, you're very likely to see two different numbers. Another consideration is that the rule of thumb is plus minus 20% is still considered accurate. Dexcom has a really good illustration. Here you see that if a CGM reading is 80 to 120 milligrams per deciliter and a finger stick is 100, it's still considered accurate. I know that this frustrates a lot of people, and I get it. My rule of thumb is that if my blood sugars are consistently 30 milligrams per deciliter off from my CGM, I will calibrate it, but that's just me. But let's go back to all those finger sticks that I did. So I generally found that the Dexcom picked up on low blood sugars a little faster than the Libre system, whereas the Libre system picked up on high blood sugars faster. Which makes total sense since I generally found that the Libre system was reading a little higher than the Dexcom. It's interesting, the Libre updates every minute, whereas Dexcom only updates every 5 minutes. So that could be an argument for the Libre picking up on blood sugar changes a little faster. I guess it could also explain why my Libre graph just looks a little bit more wavy than my Dexcom graph. Another interesting observation was that the Libre sensor kind of freaked out when I used Afrezza to correct the high blood sugar. So Afrezza is inhaled insulin and it works super fast. That means blood sugars come down quickly. And the Libre sensor just couldn't handle that. So first it gave me a sensor error. When it came back online, it showed way too low of a blood sugar. And it took a little while before it recalibrated itself back up. So yeah, that was just too much drama for the Libre sensor. Unfortunately, the Libre sensor would also lose signal during cardio sessions. And when it got back online, it would show way too high blood sugar. So this was very frustrating to me. It also, on different occasions, gave me brief sensor error or signal loss, which was not something I saw with the Dexcom sensor at all. But I also experienced a fake Dexcom low, and in that situation, the Libre sensor was spot on. So honestly, the findings from this experiment are a bit all over the place. And of course, that doesn't instill a whole lot of confidence in either of the systems. So what's best? A CGM that shows numbers that are a bit lower, or a CGM that shows numbers that are a bit higher? If I have to choose, and I have to, I don't want a system that warns me of lows before they happen. And based on this experiment, that would be a Dexcom sensor. Another important factor when deciding what CGM is best for you is user-friendliness. And the overall winner when it comes to this is, in my opinion, Dexcom, but Libre is not a bad sensor. Let me explain. Once the Dexcom G7 is inserted, it has up to a 30-minute warm-up period. So here's the trick. If you insert the sensor 30 minutes before your old sensor has expired, that means that when you then start that new sensor, you'll start getting readings immediately in either your app, your receiver, or both. Libre is a little different. It has a 60-minute warm-up period from you start it in either the app or the receiver. You can't use both at the same time. And here's an interesting little difference. Do you see that blood drop? That means that you should not be making dosing decisions, insulin dosing decisions, off of your readings for the first 12 hours. This is only a thing for Libre. Dexcom does not have that. Should you, though, make any dosing decisions based off your Dexcom for the first 12 to 24 hours? Depends. I generally do a lot of finger sticks the first 24 hours to just make sure that the sensor is accurate before I make any dosing decisions. But I think the most significant difference between the two systems when it comes to user-friendliness is their apps. I know some of you prefer to see your readings on your receiver, but for this comparison, I'll only be focusing on the apps. For Libre, you can only connect your sensor to one device, so that's either the receiver or to the app on your phone. Dexcom is a little different. Dexcom has up to 3 Bluetooth connections. So that means that you can, for example, connect it to the app, to the receiver, as well as if you have an Apple Watch. On the surface, they might look the same, but there are a lot of differences, and I think Libre falls short. Dexcom allows you to see your blood sugars for 3, 6, 12, and 24 hours, whereas Libre is stuck on a 24-hour view. That's great for blood sugar review, but not ideal if I want a better understanding of what's going on right now or over the last few hours. Dexcom also allows me to double-click and get detailed time code and blood sugar. And then we have the alarms. If you're only using a CGM to go back, look at your blood sugar, see how they react to different foods activity, you probably don't worry about alarms. But I think for most of us who manage our blood sugars using insulin, alarms are a big deal. Let me show you the Dexcom G7 alerts. So profile, alerts. Here you can see you can do quiet mode. So you can set all your alerts to be vibrate. You can set all your alerts to silence, meaning that you can silence everything, including urgent low, for up to 6 hours. Just have to move the little slider, click activate. So we're not going to do that right now. Another cool feature is that you can do several different alert features. I have primary, I have sleep alert schedules. Primary, I can have one set of alerts. Sleep, I can have another. The main difference for me is that I have the highs set a little differently. Let's go back to the primary. So another thing you can do here, which is unique for Dexcom G7, is that you can delay your first alert. This means I have it to 1 hour. This means that if my blood sugars hit 160, it will not alert me before that blood sugar has been at 160 for an hour. The reason why I want that is if I mismatch my insulin and my food, I don't need to be alerted. I know that I have enough insulin on board. But Libre is improving fast. For the first sensor, I used the designated Libre 3 app, and it can't do much. But what happened was that while I was wearing that sensor, the new Libre app was released, and I used that for the second sensor. That new app works for both the Libre 2 Plus as well as the Libre 3 Plus, and it's quite the upgrade. Let's have a look at the Libre app. So this one is a new app. It works for both Libre 2 Plus, Libre 3 Plus. Very cool new feature here is that you can silence all of your alerts. You can do that up to 6 hours. Another thing is that you can, of course, adjust your urgent lows, your low, your high. Same as Dexcom G7, but this is a new thing. This is really cool about the new Libre app. It's definitely an upgrade, but it's still not as advanced as Dexcom. Now let's move on to device integration. And since a lot of you asked, I'll also briefly talk about customer service as well as the price. With the Libre Plus sensors, Abbott, the manufacturer, is definitely trying to catch up. They're just not quite there yet. As you can see here, Dexcom still integrates with more devices, but Libre has come far lately, including integration with the iLet insulin pump. Actually, Libre 2 Plus has better integration than the Libre 3 Plus, so my guess is that the Libre 3 will expand on pump compatibility very soon. But obviously, if you have a hybrid closed loop pump, you want to choose a CGM that actually works for your system. I use multiple data injections, and I use a smart pen called an InPen from Medtronic, and it integrates with Dexcom. It's not a real-time integration, but it allows me to see my historic blood sugar numbers together with my insulin doses, and that just makes data analysis so much easier. Dexcom also has a direct-to-Apple Watch functionality. I do not have an Apple Watch, so I can't tell you how well that works, but all the comments I've seen have been very positive. I see my blood sugar readings on my Fitbit watch, and I use a third-party clock face, meaning it's not an official Dexcom solution, but it works. I unfortunately couldn't find a way to get the Libre reading on my Fitbit. There are solutions for Android, but I wasn't successful in finding a simple solution for Libre 3 Plus, iPhone, and a Fitbit combo. Quite a few of you asked about customer service, so let's talk about that. Customer service is relevant if you're having issues with your CGM, if it falls off, or if it's significantly inaccurate. As mentioned, I also recently had a FreeStyle Libre 3 Plus malfunction, so I have one experience with requesting a replacement sensor from Abbott. And that was actually fairly positive, but that's only one experience, so I'll also ask you guys for yours. And this is what you had to say. Overall, the feedback was really positive. You said that Abbott sends you a replacement if needed, although some of you found that you have to argue a bit with the customer representatives. The only complaints seem to be that it can sometimes be a little hard to understand the people who pick up the phone. You sometimes have to wait before the phone is picked up. And there are occasions where you have to send back the defective sensor, but really not a big deal. But here's the beauty. The beauty is that you actually don't have to call if your sensor falls off or if it's defective. You can just fill out a request online instead. And that is exactly what I did when my sensor failed. I filled out the information. All I needed was the serial number and the error code. And already the day after, I had an email in my inbox saying that they'll send me a replacement. Could not be easier. And they pretty quickly sent me the replacement sensor, so that's awesome. They also sent me a return box. So this one, I have to return the faulty sensor back to Abbott. So not a big deal, I'll do that. I've had to contact Dexcom customer service over the years, and they also have an online form. So it's been a really long time since I actually called them. You can contact Dexcom directly through the app or through the browser, and I've found that they've always sent me a replacement. And I'm honest, if the placement is off-label, like on my abdomen, I just click that box, and they've always just sent me a replacement. Dexcom has changed their policy when it comes to replacing sensors that fall off. Now you can only get 3 replacement sensors a year if the reason is that the sensor simply fell off. I don't generally have an issue with sensors falling off, so it's not a problem I run into, but I can see how that would be frustrating if you often lose sensors. Based on the feedback from you here on YouTube, it seems to me that the customer service experience is about the same for both. And I like that there is a no need to call option for both. Okay, all of this is wonderful, but let's also discuss price. How much you'll pay per sensor depends on whether or not your insurance will cover sensors, what your copay is, and also which pharmacy you go to. Dexcom G7 is covered by my insurance, and I pay $25 a month, so that's $8.33 per sensor. Libre is not, so I paid 100% of the cost myself. And here's a tip. Look up prices in GoodRx, and it'll show you where you can get the best price. And then you can just download the coupon for free. When I went and got them, I paid $180 for a month of Libre 3 Plus. At Dexcom would have been $190 for a month when paying cash. Overall, there's not really any way around it. If you're paying cash, Dexcom is slightly more expensive, and you should always use a coupon. No need to pay full price. If you're in doubt on which one is best for you, both companies offer a free try before you buy sensor. At least that's the case in the US. You can find the coupon on the company's website. Just remember that you still need a prescription from your doctor. So which should you choose? FreeStyle Libre 3 Plus or Dexcom G7? Ideally, you want to try both and see which one works best for you, because it's kind of wild. It seems like a lot of us have very different experiences when it comes to accuracy, how well the sensor sticks to our skin, and just the overall experience. Here's a quick recap. For me, FreeStyle Libre 3 Plus wins on overall size and how frequently the sensor updates, whereas the Dexcom G7 is really strong when it comes to alarm features, integration with devices, and catching lows. Overall, both systems stuck really well to my skin, and I found that they both performed fairly accurately, but still for me, Dexcom has the edge. The user-friendliness and the customization of the alerts in the Dexcom app Just makes it a superior system. The new FreeStyle Libre app is a real step up, but it's not quite on par yet. And finally, when I was only wearing the FreeStyle Libre sensor, I really missed seeing my blood sugars on my Fitbit. But again, I want to highlight, FreeStyle Libre 3 Plus is definitely not a bad sensor. So I'll stick with Dexcom for now. I was hoping I'd like it more, but it not picking up on my lows as fast as Dexcom led to some fairly uncomfortable situations. Like this low I felt, and it took a bit for Libre to pick up on it. I'll be creating a comprehensive review of the FreeStyle Libre 3 Plus this summer, where I really get into the weeds of the Libre system. And since I've already worn the Dexcom G7 for over 2 years, I already created that review, and you can check that out here. To make sure that you don't miss when my Libre 3 Plus review is out or any other interesting videos, remember to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. That way you won't miss a thing. And let me know down in the comments, are you team Dexcom or are you team Libre? Have you tried both? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.